Hi, everybody. Angel here. I hope you're doing great. And today I am super excited to speak with Meg, and we will get started very soon. So I thank you for joining us wherever you are, either live or on the replay. And I want to ask you how you're doing. Let us know in the chat. And also, if you would please share this live, you can just hit that little upward arrow on the far right on the bottom. Share the live so others can join. The topic is super duper interesting today, of course, as every time that we chat. And we are going to be talking about basically growing your own food. So that's going to be super exciting. Hi, everybody. Hi there.
Hey there, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing really well today.
Awesome. Well, Meg, thanks so much for joining. We have a couple people on with us. And again, please share the live, everybody, so that we can spread this good message. And also, please follow Learn Veganic, follow me for more content and, more good vibrations from both of us. So with that said, Meg, I want to thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule. Meg and I met through the Vegan Business Tribe. So shout out to Lisa and David and their new baby coming soon. So Meg, we have a lot to discuss today. And I'm super excited because in the last 3 years in particular, I've heard more and more people talking about growing your own food, hashtag grow your own
Mhm.
food. Backyard gardening, home gardening, I think has really skyrocketed in the last 3 years. And so I want to applaud you and Steph for doing what you're doing to, increase this movement, I guess you could call it. With that said, though, before we get into the whole, gardening and veganic gardening and farming with you, I want to ask you, please, if you would please share with us your plant-based vegan journey, how that started and how you got to where you are today, please.
Yeah, for sure. So I would say that even when I was a little kid, I started to feel kind of uncomfortable when I found out that meat was made from animals. I distinctly remember finding that out when I was about 6, and it was, upsetting. And it was when I was about 11 that I stopped eating cows and pigs. And then it just took me a few years during my teenage years to kind of start liking more foods. I tried to go vegan a couple of times when I was 15, but I was basically eating spaghetti with nothing on it,
Yeah.
because I didn't like many things.
Yeah.
And so it was more my year between first and second year university that I took that summer and I just read a lot of stuff online about factory farming and especially the Vegan Street website. Vegan Street was one of like the biggest websites on the internet back in, for veganism back in the early 2000s. And I just kept going back to it and reading more about it. And then at the beginning of my second year of university, I did that kind of transition over to veganism over that year.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, shout out to Vegan Street. I've seen them, I've seen them for sure. Um, I think what's beautiful is that even from a young age, you had that feeling. For me, it was more, I just didn't like blood, if
Mm-hmm.
anything with blood, I still don't like seeing blood either.
Yeah.
By the way, for me, it was more like I just didn't feel right eating meals that had anything that had blood in it, and so I would kind of opt for what we call, seafood or fish where I couldn't see the blood. And so I just thought, oh yeah, well, at least, and because it was socially acceptable, at least to um, maybe refuse what we call red meat and then to accept what we call seafood. So that's kind of how I started, like in my teenage years. And so interesting for me, it was when I walked into like a health food store in my first year of university and discovered this vegetarian book, which was more like what we would call like a more pure vegetarian diet. No lacto ovo going on there. It was more,
Okay.
they did use honey in the book, but yeah, and so I was really drawn to that. But through pressure, in my community and everything, I kind of caved and stopped doing it. And so it took me a while to get back on. Then I went vegetarian for over 20 years. And then I discovered veganism just, a few years ago. And it was like, all right, great. This is it. Now I understand why I felt this way all these years,
It's interesting when you mention the blood thing, because when I was growing up, I had the same thing with bones. I was sort of,
yes.
I couldn't eat chicken wings, but I would eat chicken nuggets. And there was so much cognitive dissonance, of almost kind of trying to hide it. And, I don't tend to eat very many kind of fast food vegan things today because I'm so used to cooking my own veggies and everything. But I kind of realized with the things that are out on the market, I would have probably become vegan at a much younger age if some of these products had been available, because it was more just about having foods I liked, but I wasn't comfortable with the meat side of it, and so it just, I think that there are easier opportunities today for people to do that transition.
Totally. And you're reminding me of way back when the veggie burgers came on the scene. And I must have been one of the first people to start eating veggie burgers because I was so relieved. Like I could actually eat veggie burgers. I didn't know anything about veganism, honestly. I was living in my own little bubble, just going to the supermarket, going down the aisle and like seeing stuff like you said, fast food. They started veggie burgers way back when. And that really helped me so much because then I didn't have to explain to anybody, that I don't like to eat what we call meat, because I didn't really have, I guess, a socially acceptable explanation or reason, and I want to shout out to the young people who are going vegan so early, the parents who are raising their children vegan, the schools and organizations that are offering, fully plant-based meals. I just want to applaud all of them for giving young people a chance to set off on the right foot at such an early age, and so I guess because you started so early, I guess I'll just ask you anyway, are there any changes that you noticed, like once you moved into the vegan lifestyle?
Well, I think, what I already mentioned a bit, just feeling more comfortable with my food. I think, there was a lot of trying not to see my food being processed, and just kind of trying to have it in, little innocuous bits where I couldn't tell it was an animal. But I knew I was doing that. I knew that I was kind of blocking out how my food was produced. And so it's nice just to be able to pick up a carrot or pick up a potato and, to be able to, cook it and eat it and enjoy it and not have any of these, ethical qualms around it. So I think it's just being, feeling more comfortable with the food that I eat. That's been one of the main differences.
Yeah, and being true to yourself. True to the animals, number one, by the way, is what I would say. And then, of course, true to yourself. I love that. I love that so much. So tell us, please, about Learn Veganic. When did you all create this? Why did you create it? What is going on with Learn Veganic, please?
For sure. So at Learn Veganic, we teach people how they can grow their own fruits and veggies using totally plant-based techniques. Because a lot of fruits and veggies are grown using animal products. So again, these are some of the hidden animal products in food production we don't always know about. And there's things like factory farm manure and blood meal and bone meal that are being used as fertilizers for our fruits and veggies. And that's especially prevalent in organic agriculture. So with Learn Veganic, what we do is we teach people how you can grow fruits and veggies in an organic way, but using totally plant-based fertilizers. So we actually founded the Veganic Agriculture Network back in 2008, and that's to promote veganic farming and gardening across North America, so to kind of put people in contact with veganic farms and to kind of put up some techniques that farmers can use. And then about 2 years ago, we started teaching the Learn Veganic online course, which is really to show home gardeners how they can grow their own fruits and veggies, and techniques that are really adapted for small scale, really adapted for people who are starting to garden or who want to transition their garden over to vegan techniques.
Wow. Well, hats off to you all for doing that. And I mean, to think that in 2008 you were already into this, I mean, you're like, you know, what they call the OGs. I mean, in my opinion.
You know what? I was really lucky because when I first got interested in growing my own food and all that, I met someone who had actually been exploring veganics for about 5 years longer than me. And so I became best friends with him, and he's the person who teaches the Learn Veganic course with me, Steph Groslow. And so he had actually already, you know, studied organic agriculture at college, tried to figure out how to veganize it. He had gone around Europe and visited a bunch of farms. And then I was super lucky because when I wanted to start learning how to garden, he already knew how, and he was able to point me toward vegan resources right away. So I didn't really have to go through a transition period of trying to find all the information. And that was actually one of the motivations for creating the course, because he kind of had to look here and there for all the little bits of info, whereas I had the, you know, the experience of having a mentor. So that's an experience we want to bring to other people, is you know, kind of a community experience and a mentorship experience around veganic gardening, because otherwise everyone's just off on their own, reading through books that are recommending that they use bone meal and things like that, you know, and trying to figure out how to veganize it. And we've already done a lot of experiments, you know, on balconies, in backyards, in different types of soil and things like that. So, you know, it's a way that we can kind of share that information with other people so they can get started right away, like right on the veganic stream, right from the beginning.
Well, what you just well, hats off to Steph. But what you just said too is that, you know, I mean, it makes me think of, you know, how people say when the student is ready, the teacher will come, and that's what happened with you. And also, what you reminded me of with your experience is also like, you know, it's almost like you asked the universe for it, or you know, you put yourself out there, and then poof, he just appeared, you know, kind of out of nowhere. And I think that's just super awesome, to be honest with you. I want to invite everybody who is joining us to please put some comments and questions down below for Meg of Learn Veganic. Also follow Learn Veganic, follow me, share this video, like it, share it, save it, do what you need to do, spread the message. We're talking about growing your own food, and that's been such a big topic in the last 3 years. Now, Meg, you have mentioned organic a couple of times or so. I thought that organic, you know, up until, I don't know, a couple of years ago, I guess, I thought organic was, whoa, the best I could get. I'm always so happy when I find organic in the supermarket. And then, you know, I kind of caught a whiff of veganic, and I'm like, oh dear, let me go look, let me go look that up. And so obviously I did. And discovered, you know, well, organic isn't 100% vegan. At the moment, I comfort myself and tell myself that's kind of like the best I can do at the moment. And I think the beauty of what you and Steph are doing is that you are offering the world an opportunity to level up, to get to the next level. And
that's exactly it. It's like that next step past veganism. You know, we have to, like you said, we have to do the best we can do when we're in a grocery store, because if it was any other type of consumerism, I would just say, well, just don't buy it. There's a lot of other things in life we can say, oh, it's made in bad conditions, we just won't buy it. But with food, we have to eat 3 times a day. You know, we just, you know, we can't just stop buying food. So we have to do the best with what we can find in the grocery stores. But you know, we're trying to at least get the word out and, you know, try to get people interested in veganics. And I think the thing about home gardening is that's when you can really make the choice. That's the one place where you can be like, well, why would I put bone meal? Why would I put blood meal? Why would I put factory farm chicken manure? Of course I don't want any of that. So that's the place where we're really empowered to make our own choice about how to grow things.
Totally. And again, you know, we can level up, as that song says, level up, level up. Now, we do have a question. Thank you, Nadia Frisella. The question is, what is some advice as far as microgreens?
Okay, so with microgreens, I'm guessing you're talking about growing microgreens indoors, perhaps, because there's ways we can grow microgreens outside too in our gardens. But one thing we can use to fertilize microgreens is basically seaweed extract. So there's a lot of places that sell seeds for microgreens that also sell seaweed extract. And one thing just to mention about uh, veganic fertilizers in general is they tend to be a lot safer too, because one nice thing about using seaweed for our microgreens is we don't necessarily want our microgreens in contact with something that might have, contaminants or funky bacteria, that can sometimes be harbored by animal-based fertilizers. So something like seaweed also ends up being quite safe for use on your microgreens too.
Cool, cool. Before we get to the next question, everybody please share this video with that little arrow there at the bottom right of your screen. I just did the same. And let's go to our next question. Please keep the questions coming from Meg. This is super awesome. We have Paul Berry. Does Meg know anyone doing veganic farming on scale? Does she think veganic farming could evolve on scale to feed whole communities? Tell us, Meg.
So for sure. I mean, I think one of the best examples of a veganic farm that we can look to is Tolhurst Organics that's in England. So Tolhurst is Tolhurst. And I think they might actually be the longest running organic farm in England, if I'm not mistaken. They've been running for decades and doing it in a stock-free organic or veganic way. And yeah, they do a CSA program where they provide fruits and veggies for dozens of families, and their soil quality has really been, improving over time. They're a really good example of a very well-managed farm. But as far as scale goes for things like, if we're talking about things like wheat and legumes and things like that, interestingly, some organic farms that are large scale for things like that will actually be veganic almost by default or close to veganic, because when you're talking about a farm that's 100 acres of wheat and soy or something like that, or even a much bigger farm than that, sometimes manure might not even sort of be available. So some places are going to be kind of farming almost veganically by default because they'll be using things like crop rotation and green manures. And green manures is basically growing things like legume plants that can access nitrogen from the air and then feeding those plants to the soil so that you're basically creating your own fertilizer in the soil. And so, I mean, if we buy things like, organic rather, if we buy things like organic wheat or organic oats, there's a chance it might have actually been grown with plant-based methods. And there's lots of examples of farms that are doing that, not from a veganic ethic, just because, they were just able to manage their fertility on the farm more easily without animal products. So I think that there are a lot of examples that we don't even know exist because they're not necessarily self-identifying as veganic. They just happen to be managing their farm that way. But I think we can take lessons from farms that are doing that to see that, yes, of course, using things like crop rotation and cover crops and green manures, we can have large-scale farms that don't require animal byproducts.
Wow. Yeah, thank you for those questions there, Paul Berry. Those were awesome. His question and your answer remind me of the phrase accidentally vegan, which I've come across and I've used, but more in reference to meals. So like, let's say you're going to a restaurant or you're traveling to a different country. A lot of countries have local traditional dishes that are vegan. And it's not like you're saying, it's not that they did that on purpose, that was their intention or anything. It's just that they happen to use 100% plants in their recipes, if you will, that have been going on for centuries and centuries. So, which is so beautiful, especially for people like me and you and everyone else here, because, when you go to certain countries, sometimes you're really stuck like Chuck. You're just like, oh my gosh, what am I going to eat, But if you go to, let's say, France, you can have like a ratatouille, or you go to, let's say, Greece, you could maybe have some, I don't know, grape leaves that are, often accidentally vegan, et cetera, et cetera. So, or bean dishes, et cetera. So it totally, I get what you're saying about the whole, accidentally vegan, I guess, options out there. So I want to say hi to everybody who's joining either live or on the replay. Please share this video, hit that little arrow on the bottom right, like it, comment, keep your questions coming from Meg, because we're talking about a super important topic that, you know, is just being top of mind, especially in the last few years. Now, Meg, I know you have explained a bit to us about veganic versus organic, and if I'm not mistaken, did you use the words stock free a little while ago?
Yeah, so stock free is another way to say veganic, but it's kind of another term that's used a bit more in England. And some farms prefer to use the word stock free rather than the word veganic. But they essentially mean the same thing in terms of using plant-based techniques to grow with.
Right. So I do still have a question. I think it's important for you to kind of clarify for all of us, like what really is the distinction between veganic and organic, especially for those of us like myself who up until recent times thought that, you know, organic was, whoa, the best I could get. And then of course, you know, diving deep and digging into, pun intended, digging deep into veganism, I discovered, you know, the whole veganic element to it. So please, if you would just share with us, I guess in everyday language for the everyday person, what is or are the differences between veganic and organic?
Yeah, so basically veganic is organic minus the animal ingredients. So organic already does a lot of great things. You know, that there's a lot of reasons why we like organic and why we appreciate it. So with organic, they don't use chemical fertilizers. They don't use most types of, you know, pesticides. And in organic, there's a lot more attention paid to caring for the soil, to reinstating biodiversity and things like that. So there's, you know, a lot of really wonderful positive things about organic. But a lot of the fertilizers happen to be animal-based. And so, you know, when people move away from chemical fertilizers, they'll often move toward animal-based fertilizers. So basically in organic agriculture, anything is pretty much permitted as a fertilizer if it's of natural origin, which could be of animal origin or vegetable origin, plant origin. So some of the common fertilizers used in organic include manure, which is very from factory farms, at least in North America, and blood meal, bone meal, feather meal, fish emulsion, shrimp compost, crab compost. Sometimes if you go to a garden center and you buy something called compost, that might not be composted plants, it might be composted shrimp. You know, kind of they're kind of the remnants of the fishing industry, and you know, all the little shells and everything. And so basically what veganic does is it says, let's take everything we like about organic, but let's just push the animal products aside and use plant-based techniques instead. So some plant-based techniques we can use are things like making veggie compost. There's things like legumes. Legumes have this amazing ability of accessing nitrogen from the air because they they have a relationship with soil bacteria. They can access nitrogen from the air. So nitrogen is something that plants really need, and legume plants, they basically create it. They can kind of they access it from the air that's around us. So we can take legume plants like soy and we can feed them to other plants in order to nourish other plants. And there's things like, even things like leaves or small tree branches. You know, if you think about a forest, you know, if you think all of our agricultural soils pretty much are deforested lands, right? So all of these wonderful soils on farms, those were built up over thousands of years by little tree branches falling, by leaves falling, and then, you know, these were deforested and turned into farms. But when we talk about regenerative agriculture and regenerating the soil, one of the best ways we can regenerate the soil is to use things like small tree branches and leaves that builds up a really wonderful quality of soil. So, you know, there's ways of doing regenerative vegan agriculture. Yeah, so basically it's about not exploiting animals, but also working in harmony with wild animals too. So, you know, we try to have a vibrant soil with a lot of soil life in it. We try to feed the soil and protect the soil so there's lots of warmth. So it's not something where, it's not a system where it's free from animals, but it's a system where the animals are all free. So it's all free living animals that come and participate.
Say that again for those of us in the back.
Yeah, so it's not a system that's free from animals. It's a system where all the animals are free. So it's all about collaborating with free living animals. So it's, some people look at veganic and they say, well, that's not natural because you're supposed to have animals in a system. To which the response is, yeah, but why does it have to be a chicken that's been bred over thousands of years, you know, to be pumping out eggs every day when normally in life they would only have 12 eggs a year and they wouldn't even normally live in this climate, you know. We have woodpeckers here, we have blue jays, you know, and you know, why not reinstate habitat for the animals around and welcome them in? You know, there's certainly a place, of course, for animals in the ecosystem, but
Yes.
there's no particular reason why that has to be 3 or 4 types of domesticated animals when there's, you know, thousands of types of free living animals around.
Yes, thank you. And Paul Berry says beautiful. I agree. I love that. But you know, too, for example, you were speaking of you know, the cute little birds who are like living free, you know, around where you are, and you know, and you mentioned the word manure, you know, which people might not be comfortable with, or poo or whatever. I use the word poo all the time, by the way. But, you know, my point
We
is,
can call it poo for sure.
right, right. Well, my point is that the poo that's dropping from, let's say, these birds, or let's say any other wild animals who are free in the area, you know, on these properties, you know, their poo is becoming a part of the ecosystem, a part of the soil, and by default it's just natural. They're just going about their business, you know, they're not going to the toilet or the bathroom or anything like that, you know, they're just out there, you know, in nature. And so I guess you know, naturally veganic farming will benefit from you know, the natural eliminations of the animals who are free as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about, you know, trying to reinstate natural habitat and things like that, because in any natural ecosystem, you know, there's so many different types of animals who participate of their own accord, and there's equilibriums that get set up. Whereas in modern agriculture, a lot of the times, you know, there's just a monoculture, and then one little animal comes in and becomes a pest and things like that, and it can become a bit problematic. Whereas if we have really biodiverse systems, you know, there's always some things that are doing really well, a few things that might be having a bit of trouble, but as a whole, you have kind of an equilibrium that sets up when you have a whole bunch of different types of, you know, birds and insects and
Exactly. So let's first of all, I want to say hi to everybody. Thanks for joining. Please keep your questions and comments coming. Please follow Learn Veganic, follow me, share the video. Let's go to your course. Tell us about your courses. I signed up for your, you're doing, yeah, I think you have 3 sessions this week. I signed up for one of them. Tell us about, you know, what you have going on this week, and then also what you have going on later in the month of February, please.
Awesome, yeah. So this week we're giving a free presentation about veganic gardening. One of them is tomorrow at noon, Wednesday at noon. The other one's Thursday at 6 p.m. and the other one's Saturday at noon. So we've got 3 different times so people can join us live at a time that works best for them. And basically we're going to be talking about how you can create a thriving garden using entirely plant-based fertilizers without any animal byproducts. And anyone who would like to sign up for that, it's on our website, learnveganic.com/presentation. And there's a little place there where you can choose which time you'd like and sign up. And yeah, we have a course that's starting on February 15th. Always like our favorite time of the year because it brings together people who are interested in veganism and interested in gardening and interested in combining the two. And we get together and we learn about veganic gardening together for 7 weeks. So we teach a 2-hour course every week that people can watch live with us, or they can watch it whenever they'd like as a recording, and they have access for about a year. And then for 7 weeks, we also do Q&A meetups where we get together as a group, as a community in a Zoom, and we chat together and we have conversations and we share our experiences, and people can ask us questions. So that's really a time for community building, and also, you know, helping people along with their individual projects too. So it's always a blast, and we're really, really looking forward to it. And if anyone's interested in signing up, we still have early bird until this Sunday, and so I'd recommend signing up early if you would like to get the early bird. And yeah, and it starts on February 15th, so we're always happy to have more people join us.
Awesome. Now, tell us, please, does a person have to have a yard, a garden? Do they have to be vegan already to join your offerings here, your courses?
So yeah, I mean, it's useful if people have access to some sort of space to garden. That can be something like a balcony, or it can be a patio, or it can be a little piece of side where you can put some pots. So we do teach people how they can grow even in containers and things like that. And then we do a lot of techniques that are related to in-ground gardening. So if someone has a backyard or community garden, I actually grow in one of my neighbors' back, you know, so, and I've grown in other people's backyards on many occasions, you know, where I have neighbors or friends who have some extra space and maybe not enough time for gardening. Yeah, I would suggest just looking at your options for what's available for land. And people don't necessarily have to be vegan to join us, but I think the thing that I tell people is that we certainly teach the whole course from a vegan perspective, and pretty much everyone who's joining is interested in learning about gardening from a vegan perspective. So I would just say people just need to be open to that idea and interested in that idea of learning about gardening from a perspective that's, you know, animal friendly and sustainable, and knowing that, you know, everybody else who's there is going to be, you know, interested in exploring it from that perspective too.
Awesome, awesome. And what I want to add to what you said already, what you said perfectly, is, let's say from my perspective, right? Even if a person doesn't currently have a garden or access to a garden, you know, they may be envisioning, manifesting, thinking,
Exactly.
wishing, and dreaming to have that that beautiful space, be it small, medium, or large, and they are kind of like projecting it and planning this. And so it's not like you have to have it, you have to have that space right now. But the beauty of what you're offering, from my perspective, is that a person such as myself can, you know, gain this knowledge from you and then use it in the near future, medium future, or, you know, far away future. It doesn't matter. And so I think that's the beauty of what you're saying, because, you know, what you're offering, it does not expire. I mean, you could use it in a day, a week, a month, a year, a decade, whenever.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that's nice about, I mean, one thing that we try to show people in the course is a wide variety of techniques. So instead of going really, really deep into one technique, we try to cover a lot of different veganic techniques, a lot of different ways people could garden veganically, so that they could garden veganically in any situation they could find themselves in for the rest of their lives, whether that's out in the countryside one day, or in a condo with a balcony, or whatever it might be. So it is nice to have that idea of what we could accomplish in different spaces, so that as we kind of move through life, we can say, okay, you know, if I move here, I can do this, or, you know, in this situation, I could do this, and we can start kind of making plans for what type of garden we might like.
Totally. Yeah, no, I love that. And you know, again, it's something that we, like you're saying, we can evolve. We can evolve with it, you know. Now, do you do any one-on-one I guess, consultations or education or training for someone, let's say that, they're not going to get to the course, but, or they don't want a group course, they want a one-on-one deep dive, digging deep into, their particular, scenario and requirements, etc. Do you offer any kind of one-on-one, digging deep?
So far, it's not something that we've offered. We've tended to offer everything kind of in the group course scenario. If somebody's listening and that's really the thing they're interested in, they can always write to us individually through our website, learnveganic.com, and we could always talk about what their needs are. But, that we might consider doing in the future too. We're kind of, I like the group course scenario because we get the community building aspect of it, which I really appreciate. But yeah, when you mention the one-on-one, it's an interesting idea too.
Right. And so are there any other future projects or offerings that you want to mention at this time?
So one thing I can mention too is that we have a guide that's available on our website, which is at learnveganic.com/materials, and it's a guide to 20 veganic materials to improve fertility in your plant-based garden. So that really has a quick overview of a lot of the different materials we can use, because sometimes when people think of veganic, they say, well, does that just mean it's just veggie compost? And yet there's so many other things that we could use to garden veganically with. So this is a guide that kind of does a quick overview, and in the course we go into much greater depth about how to use each of those materials. But it's a little bit like, some of those guides for veganism where it might say, here's where you can get your iron, or here's where you can get your calcium, and it'll have some little pictures of it. So this is a guide that's showing where we can get nitrogen or where we can get phosphorus and things like that from veganic sources. So it's a lovely little guide, and you can download it for free at learnveganic.com/materials.
I will be running over there after to get a copy of that. Absolutely. That's awesome. We are going to wrap this up soon. So please, if you have any questions, to those who are watching, I want to thank you so much for watching live or on the replay. Put your questions down below before we wrap this up with Meg. Follow Learn Veganic, follow me, share, comment, like, save, everything, all the things. And while we wait for any more questions that might be coming in, Meg, what are the best ways for people to contact you for information, collaboration, questions, comments, etc.?
Yeah, so through our website, learnveganic.com, we have a little contact form on the bottom. So if you'd like to say hello, or if you have a question, or if you'd like to collaborate, you can write to us there. And we're on Instagram and Facebook as Learn Veganic. So you can find out there about our courses and our events. Sometimes we run community meetups that are open to everybody and things like that. And we also put up photos of our gardens during the seasons. To stay in touch with us and see what we're up to, you can follow us there.
Yeah, awesome. If I were like in your shoes, like, harvesting all those yummy, fruits and vegetables, I think I would be munching on like some of them as I go, because even in my tiny kitchen, when I'm like, when I like bring, let's say, carrots or I don't know, radishes or lettuce from the supermarket, I find myself like, taking some of it before I actually start preparing. So I'm like eating, munching on a carrot or munching on some lettuce or, radishes or whatever. Those are like mainly like kind of what's in season at the moment where I am. And, I wonder if that happens to you, or like if you like kind of munch on them as you're going along.
Well, we definitely munch on a lot of things in the garden. I mean, some of my favorite things in the garden are strawberries. We always have lots of strawberries, and we have like blueberries, and there's some stuff that just never makes it back to the kitchen. We just munch on it all straight in the garden.
That's what I'm talking about.
And some of this stuff is so delicious. That's one thing I love about gardening too, is you can grow some varieties that you can't get at the supermarket, because you know, the strawberries at the supermarket, they've been bred to be able to be shipped well and to be able to sit on a shelf for 5 days and things like that. Our strawberries, if you leave them on the counter for 2 hours, they start going soft. You know, they don't have the same, you know, shelf life, but they have so much flavor. They have
Yes.
so much more flavor. And, you know, we can, if we want to freeze them, we can stick them in the freezer right away, right after we harvest them. But, you know, you just get this delightful burst of flavor that can be hard to find from the grocery store.
You know why I totally believe you? For two reasons. I remember way back when I switched from what we call conventionally grown produce to organic produce. I recall feeling that I was like tasting the real flavor, like for the first time, or I guess for one of the rare occasions up until that point, compared to like the conventional produce. So I can only imagine, like like leveling up to a veganic produce
Mhm.
plant food, and like really tasting the difference. The second reason why I really believe you is because I have had like strawberries that I have bought from the supermarket that are organic, and there's really not a big punch of flavor.
Mhm.
So I can really
Yeah, you need to try. Yeah, if you have a strawberry that's been warmed up by the sun on a hot sunny day, and then you just put it straight in your mouth right off the plant, it's incredible.
oh gosh, I I'm looking forward to that. Yes, I want to say hi to everybody who's joining. Thank you so much. Now let me ask you, my final question for you, Meg, is then, is there anything else you want to share with us to kind of wrap this up and put a bow on it for us, please?
Sorry, I cut out for half a second. Could you say that one more time?
Sure. Do you have any final thoughts, any final comments for us to kind of wrap this up and put a bow on it for us, please?
Yeah, I would just say anyone who's interested in gardening, just to give it a shot, because I know that, you know, especially when I first started gardening, just how fascinating it was to connect with plants. You know, I think we've all been, you know, kind of disconnected from nature in a lot of ways, and to see things like seeds and to plant them and to watch them do their thing, you know, we're just participating in it. We're just helping them along and giving them a little home. But, you know, nature is taking care of so many aspects of it. We end up having pollinators come in, and it's just really wonderful to participate in certain cycles of nature, and just to watch it happen. So if anyone's thinking of gardening and hasn't started yet, to even start with just a few plants, like a kale plant. Kale's pretty hardy, you know, and just to start with a few little things, even if you don't have much space, and just give it a go.
That's so beautiful and so encouraging, and I can relate because even when I had a tiny, what you would call like a flower garden with flowering plants, and of course non-flowering plants, of course just seeing all the bees and the wasps and the ladybugs, and the what do you call it, the like even the hummingbirds like coming in and putting their beak
Mhm.
in, just seeing them like fluttering there, like you could hardly see their wings. Like even that to me was fascinating. I was at that point, I had my desk in front of my garden, so I would open the blinds, and I
Ooh.
would just be mesmerized, just sitting on my desk like watching these hummingbirds coming in for a meal, and doing their thing, and it was just so beautiful. So I really thank you for that encouragement, and even like even if it's on a tiny scale, as people would say. So thank you so much for that. And Meg and Steph, thank you so much for all you're doing. I am gonna wrap this up, save it um uh, to my Instagram feed and stories, and then I'll put it over on YouTube at some point as well. And I'm gonna message you after I put it up on Instagram there, Meg.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. It was really wonderful chatting today.
Thank you, Meg, and everyone, thanks so much for joining. Share, like, comment, all the things. Take it easy and take good care, everybody, and happy veganic gardening, everybody. Thank you. Bye-bye.